I think if we let feeling guide us, if we create awareness of how we're doing emotionally, how it feels, how that emotion feels, and then engaging in the behaviors that allow us to feel good and like really good, not just in the moment good, but like overall good, then we've got it.
Welcome to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. And today we speak to an internationally recognized health and well-being expert known for his expertise around extreme weight loss. He hosts Sky TV's Obese, A Year to Save My Life, and was a trainer on NBC's Biggest Loser. He's currently the ambassador for Cancer Research, UK Race for Life, and England's Athletic Run. Please welcome Mr. Jessie Pavelka to this week's Escape Your Limits podcast. So Jessie, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. How are you dealing with being sort of locked in at home in Los Angeles?
It's I use the word interesting. It's been interesting because I feel like interesting is non-committal. It could be good, it could be bad. I've had a mix of both, right? I think when this whole thing kicked off, being a business owner and delivering sessions live in the room to our clients, to then having to pivot to a fully virtual offering, that was a challenge. And so, our team had to come together. We had to figure out how we were going to do it. And just me as a business owner with my business partners, it was stressful. And so there was a little bit of a moment in time where it was like, okay, what the heck is happening right now? How bad is this going to get? What do we need to do to survive? And then I would say after about 2 weeks, we found our feet. I think the interesting thing during this time is like finish lines. People love finish lines. We like to know what we're going to be doing in a month or 2 months or 2 days even. And I think that the uncertainty we've been presented with makes it hard to define a finish line. And I think you have to do the best that you can, adapt quick. And I think our team did a really good job of that. I feel pretty good about, within myself, I feel pretty good each and every day. However, there are moments when it's a challenge. I think just if you're a human being on planet Earth right now, you've just got to appreciate that things are different right now, and you've got to do things differently and just embrace different as much as you can.
Yeah, that uncertainty is pretty tough. A lot of our clients and our business is reliant on people opening up. And, when you read the news every day, which I try and control my access to the news, but when you read it, it ends up sort of just putting you into a bit of a spin, because it's like, well, okay, there's no news yet. So what do you do? How do you plan for that? How do you deal with that uncertainty in your life? I know you coach people to kind of deal with a lot of situations, and what advice are you giving to clients that are probably stressed and doing, eating stuff they shouldn't do and not exercising and thinking, sod it, I'll throw this whole lot out the window until it's over?
Yeah, I mean, I think without sounding too gimmicky, there are 3 things that I've been communicating to our clients virtually. One is control, one is consistency, and one is connection. So those 3 areas are really important during this time. So first and foremost, if we're dealing with, this type of uncertainty, chronic uncertainty, how do we regain a sense of control? We identify what's in our circle of influence. What is it you can do today that's going to get you in a state of feeling more grounded and in control? When you look at different forms of health, right? Physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, those are all your gateway into control, right? Feeling as though you are driving this machine. And so if you just pay attention to what you're eating, if you pay attention to your physical self, how much are you moving? Are you challenging your body? If you pay attention to your thought life, like how am I feeling right now? And if I'm not feeling good, what action can I take to get from a negative state to a positive state? Or how can I just not do? Because I feel like a lot of people during this time are caught up in the doing, right? I know that people involved in the corporate world, if you've got a business, you're busier now than you were before because you're in back-to-back meetings trying to figure out how to make sense of this whole thing. And then also the social side is really key. Connect with the people you love, connect with the people that are in your close circle, the ones that you trust, let them know how you're doing. and just create as many meaningful connections as you can during this time. The last one, point of connection, and this connects more to the spiritual side, I think, is the connection to something greater than you is key. And I think right now what's beautiful is individuals, organizations, they're all getting out of themselves and into service. How can we help human beings right now? And I think that's a beautiful thing. And whenever you get out of yourself and you support another human being, it just makes you feel better. It's bigger than you. And I think this is the time now to get out of the self and into service as much as you can. What that does, though, once we start to identify what those behaviors are, physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual, we start to feel more in control and grounded. And I think through that, once we identify those behaviors, we just want to start to ritualize some of them, create consistency around them. And that's up to you as an individual, right? Looking at your life in a 24-hour period, what is it you can do each and every day to regain that sense of control, ritualizing it. And then lastly, which I talked about, was connection. There are 3 points of connection I'll highlight during this time, especially, that are key: connection to the self, connection to your team, whether you work in an organization or your team that lives at home with you. Connect as much as you can with them, have meaningful connections. And then the last one, the third one, which I highlighted, connect to something greater than you. I think if you just focus on those 3 areas, control, consistency, connection, identify what it means for you in your own life, you'll do a much better time during these times.
With what's going on at the moment and with the uncertainty, how are you seeing people that I suppose are also struggling with their weight and health? Are you finding that when people are generally consumed with the news and they're very fearful? Do you think that diet and health and weight loss is one of the first things that sort of that people drop in times like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to control. What is it that gives you that sense of control? Everything has been amplified, right? So if you were an emotional eater, you're you're really an emotional eater right now. If you were a workaholic, you're going to be more of a workaholic. If you were someone that loved exercise, you're really doing some exercise right now. And I think that's just something to take notice of, is everything is amplified. So if you are someone that's struggling with weight, just become more aware each and every day, like, what's going on with me? It all starts in the head, especially when you're dealing with someone that has emotional ties to food. It's just by creating more awareness. All of these things are easier said than done, obviously. But I think during this time, just really be easy on yourself, slow down, and just appreciate that these times are going to be a little more challenging and things are going to be amplified. So take it slow, become aware, and just do the best that you can. I tell everybody, start small. I love small changes, tiny actions. I think they get overlooked in the hype of big and exciting. But everything starts with a simple small step. And that's one of the gifts I think that we've gotten from this whole thing, the gifts of COVID, right? There's quite a few actually on reflection. Is, there's this new appreciation for simplicity, this new appreciation for small and seemingly insignificant. And I think that's a real gift. Before, I don't know about you, but things moved fast. It was like more, bigger, faster, faster. And now we're forced to slow down. We're forced to look at spring happening outside here in Los Angeles. I can't remember the last time I went for a walk outside and noticed, birds and bees and the fruit growing on the trees. And that's been a real gift to me. And I think it's one that we all have the potential to embrace during this time that can really help us in moments of struggle.
Yeah, I've been the same. I think there's a lot of things that I've probably done that I've never done before, like sitting down eating with my family is one, and recognizing where I'm living. I've been here for a couple of years now, and I've missed. So I spent most of my time, probably like you, on a plane traveling somewhere. And do you find yourself that there's almost like a sort of taking off a lot of this pressure? It's like, actually, it's not that, because as an example, when I'm on holiday, I like to go on holiday when everybody else is closed, because I think I'm missing something or I should be doing something. But at the moment, it's like, well, I don't feel as I'm missing out because I can't do anything. So you almost giving yourself permission to stay at home and not put the pressure on yourself.
Yeah, I think for those of us who travel a lot, home has a new place in your heart. I think, one of the things I did, because I'm gone every month, and we travel Asia Pacific, Japan, China, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Russia, Latin America, and that's throughout a 12-month period. And so it's a lot. And it's, in some ways you just, it becomes normal. Like, it's like, yeah, of course, I just jump on a plane, we fly 16 hours, get off a plane, and we have meetings, and that's normal. But it's not. That's, the human body is not built to travel that fast. And so it's been nice to to slow down and just embrace this idea of home. Like, what does home mean? What does it look like here? And get in a routine with home, with redecorating, making it more functional. I didn't even try those things before. It was like, that looks that way, and I don't have time to make it any better, right? And I think now I've slowed down and moved some furniture around, made things more functional. There's a nice routine in place. However, and this goes back to what I mentioned earlier, my meetings, I'm in back-to-back meetings. I don't know. Are you getting that, Matthew? Like, just stacked
I'm the same.
meetings.
I sort of the Zoom meetings. I seem, I don't know why and how it's happened, but I seem to be, if I assume that most of my pre-COVID life there's a lot of travel, either on the road. I used to go to LA quite a bit, and I, like you, travel to London at least once a month. So I seem to have I'd be doing a lot of travel, and when I was traveling, you weren't always working. And since this, I seem to be doing 12 to 14 hours in some days, and I'm back to back. It's like I'm not hanging out and chilling out, drinking beer. I'm full on. So I'm just wondering, either I was doing something wrong before, or I'm being more productive now. I'm still trying to figure out what's going on, or whether they're just trying to get things back on track and communicate with a lot more people and business owners and that sort of thing, whether there's just more in terms of communication that's needed until it levels off. I really don't know. But I'm certainly way busier than what I was previously.
Yeah. They call it Zoom fatigue, because the back-to-back meetings, your eyes just start to lose the ability to focus. I've found myself just staring at things some moments, and I'm like, I can't think right now, and I don't know why. But I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to have tech right now. I mean, imagine not being especially if you're not living near family, being able to, sit down and have a conversation with them and see them and laugh together. In some cases, cry together. It is beautiful that we're able to do that during a time like this. But just like with anything else, there's these pros and cons that come along with it. And I think that if you're not giving yourself setting boundaries with your tech and giving yourself a beat or a break from all of this, then it does have an impact on you as a human being.
Yeah, I certainly think I'm not a tech person. In fact, I'm terrible. I can just about open my laptop, but I think certainly what it's done for me and our business is you made people realize what's actually out there and how things can be done differently. Because I think you just get used to doing things that you're comfortable with, not because they're better, but just because you're comfortable. And I think when things like this happen, like Zoom meetings, we're an international company. We've got people all over Asia and Europe, the USA, and we very rarely had this type of call. And now we've been doing meetings on Zoom. We're like, actually, that's a lot better. You can see the person, you can share screens. We don't need to travel. So I think there's some interesting things that have come out of it, certainly. Yeah. So Jessie, tell for those that don't know of you, can you give us a little bit of a background of one, how you got into this sort of business that you're in, and what are some of the things that you've been doing recently?
Yeah, I mean, I started out as a trainer in the early 2000s. I feel like it was before the obesity epidemic went mainstream. And I was just a trainer on the gym floor doing my thing. I knew right away, though, I wanted to be an independent. I didn't like working for gym chains, so I quickly became an independent. But I was working with your stereotypical clients, it was a mix. It was a variety of types. You had people that wanted to lose the last 10 pounds, people that wanted to lose, that didn't need to lose any weight, just wanted to have a chat. People that needed to lose a certain amount of weight, maybe a significant amount of weight, but it was very surface driven. And I don't know what it was at the time. For me, I was going through my own kind of changes in life, going from college to the real world, and I was searching. And I think at the time I needed something different. I needed something with meaning. And so in the early 2000s, I decided to specialize. My business partner and I at the time, we started to specialize and worked in bariatrics. So this was people that needed to lose a significant amount of weight. And that was a game changer for me. I loved the work. I loved working with people that really needed it. It wasn't, yes, there were still the clients that just wanted to have a chat, but there was always that drive back to necessity, right? This was something these people needed. If they didn't have it, life wasn't going to be good, or life was going to go away. And so that really opened me up to the importance and the purpose behind the work. And so I continued in that direction. I started to work with more and more people that needed to lose a significant amount of weight. I also, in parallel, understood the power of a platform, of a profile. And so I continued, trying to build my career as a fitness model. It's just so funny saying that now. As a fitness model, doing my thing, I was really good at transforming my physique. I had a sports background, so I understood all the nutrition. I understood all, what types of exercise were going to give me the best results. So I did that in parallel. So I continued working with people that really needed to lose a significant amount of weight. I continued working on my own personal brand and profile. I saw the power of the .coms, and I also put some effort and energy into that early on. And I just started to build profile around my passion. And in 2008, I got my first TV gig, and I was a trainer on the Lifetime TV series Diet Tribe, which was it was an incredible experience. It taught me so much. I went from a trainer in a gym who did a few magazine shoots to a trainer that was supporting a group of females that really needed the help, but also having to understand what was going on in the world of production, TV production. So I got thrown into the lion's den, and looking back, it was challenging, but I loved it. I mean, I look back at some of the experiences I had early on, and I think about how immature I was. And I don't mean that in like I don't mean that in a literal sense. It was just more, I was very green. I didn't know. And I'm not sure that everyone knew that I didn't know. Maybe I did a good job, pulling the wool, but it's just, I look back and I'm really grateful for the kid that I used to be, because it really taught me a lot during that time. And I stayed curious. And I think that's really important. I think curiosity is really important. Staying in the student seat is really important. Asking questions is really important. And I did all of those things early on, and I got more work. I got more work in the TV space. My profile was raised. I continued to help people. And I went from helping people one-on-one to being able to help people one-on-one to one-to-many. And I think that's the big transition. When you can go from one-to-one clients to one-to-many, do workshops, do seminars, you start to see the potential of a platform, and it grows. And it's just kind of continued on from there. Here's where it got really exciting, though, for me is, a lot of my work was in weight loss. In fact, all of it was in weight loss. And I did a show in the UK called A Year to Save My Life, which I loved that show. It was, for me, it was a game changer in a lot of ways. Not necessarily for my career, but just for my purpose. I just dove into it, and it taught me a lot. But here's the thing. So off the back of that, I started working with who's my manager and business partner now, Jill Tipping, and we started a business. Now, the business itself was based around my 4 elements: eat, sweat, think, and connect, which used to be movement, food, mind, power, and family. It was at the core of everything that we did. And we started out with workshops, seminars, one to few, one to many. And it was interesting because I had assumed that the audience that was going to gravitate to the work was going to be people that needed to lose a significant amount of weight. And what we found really early on was it was people from all different walks of life, all different shapes and sizes, different cultures. And it was a very revealing experience. It showed that the solution, the work, wasn't about weight loss. In fact, it showed that weight came in many different forms. There's the physical weight, there's the mental and emotional weight, and it's how we deal with those things that matters. And the how-to for me is always going back to the elements: eat, sweat, think, and connect, and taking ownership of those 4 areas. Now, from that time, when we started the business to now, we shifted gears. We went from direct to consumer to business. In 2015, we started working with Cisco Systems on a global health and wellness initiative. And it just, again, it showed us that, look, this solution called the 4 elements, it lives in many different places, many different environments. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter where you're from, they apply. And that was very exciting. I kind of went off on down a rabbit hole there, but essentially, my career's taken me down a lot of different paths, and it's been very enlightening, and it's been an incredible ride. And I look forward to more and more coming further down the line.
So if you go back to that first break, what do you think? What do you think helped to get that first opportunity on the TV, and what do you think? What did you do to be able to sustain it? Because I guess in a lot of times in life, you get put into a position and you either sort of you thrive or you crash and burn in a lot of cases. So what was that? How did you get there, and what did you? What were some of the things that you did to sort of use that as a platform to get to your next stage in development?
I think I always cared about the work, and that had to come first and foremost. People had to come first. If I put me in front of that wasn't going to work out. That wasn't going to feel right for me. And so I always put the work first. So if I was helping somebody, I was helping them. It wasn't, sell the dream and F off. It was like, show up and do the work. And the work for me was always with people. It's interesting though when you're trying to do that in build profile, because they have conflicting values at times, right? And I often have to pull myself back to, what is this all for, right? What, at the end of the day, why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? And it always comes back to that. It's about the people. It's about the work. And I think also people pick up on these things, right? We like to think that we're getting away with things, that if we're making it about people, we have to make it about people. And if we're faking that, it's going to come through in our language. It's going to come through in how we show up. And I think that for people, especially in this kind of influencer era that we live in, it's very easy to not make it about the work and make it more about the material, like who I am, my brand. You got to have the core of that. At the core of that has to be people. You've got to help people and be of service. And that was always my driver.
What was it like in being in that? And I guess you still are in some respect, but what was it like in that sort of TV media world compared to, I suppose, being behind the scenes as a trainer? Was that a big shift? Did you have to sort of handle yourself differently, or it seems like it's a very competitive space to be in?
Yeah, I mean, it is a competitive space. I never really got caught up in the competition of it, which I'm glad. I think that the biggest challenge for me was, you've got, especially when you're doing a weight loss show, you've got people's lives you're dealing with, and then you've got production, and you have to the production company has to do the best job that they can, and they have a duty of care to do that, to make sure that the people are okay. But sometimes what makes good TV isn't what is classified as taking care of people. And I think that, there were some moments that I can vaguely remember where there was conflict between those two things. It's like, we want to capture this, but it's to the detriment of the individual. And I'm never really game for that. So there was always, just communication where it's like, I don't think that's best for them. And I would try to always come back to that. I don't think this is best for them. I know, I get that it's for TV, but that was probably the most challenging piece for me, is making peace with the reality that what's good for the person isn't always good for production.
Hmm. You managed to sort of keep, I think, how many television series did you do to date?
I did well per season. I did 2 of Diet Tribe. I did 2 of A Year to Save My Life, and I did 1 season of The Biggest Loser. And that was the last episodic opportunity I had. I've done things outside of that, but it's just been, your morning talk shows and all of that. But what's been interesting about now my career is I've just dove more and more into the work, and so things look very different than what they used to. And I don't know if going back to TV would be something that I could do. Just because there's a lot of people that rely on me in the business right now.
So you mentioned earlier that you were working in the business before obesity became mainstream. I guess in your mind, what was the shift that you felt this had suddenly become mainstream? What kind of happened in your mind? And then secondly, I suppose, why did you feel that was why did you feel that was something that you're calling to do something about it?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I did say that I think it was before it became mainstream, but I'll add a caveat to that. I think that I wasn't awake to the issues of obesity at the time. What happened was for me at the time, I was going through my own challenges in life. I was trying to figure out what it meant to be a man, what it meant to contribute to society. And, I think, as a boy becoming a man, there's just, there's challenges that you're faced with. And I think that for me, I was going through that and I was in it. And what I found when I started working with these people was purpose and relief. And that for me gave me a chance to get outside of my own issues and do something that contributed to the world, and that really woke me up. I don't know about you, but my early 20s were a bit crazy. I was just like, I don't know what, consciousness. What was that, right? It's like I didn't get that concept, and so this was an opportunity for me to stay conscious and be in it with someone and contribute to another person's life. And I loved that. And I try to always come back to that.
It's interesting you say that. Like I probably had a similar period in my life, early 20s, I guess, and maybe longer than that. But do you think that's, I'm talking about guys because I can only really relate directly to that. But do you think that there is a stage where we go through where we are a bit lost, and if we don't have that purpose, it's a great, it's very easy to just go off the rails and, without having that focus and something to put your energy into.
Yeah, I mean, I think that well, what is it? The male brain doesn't fully develop till 25.
Oh, is it?
So
I feel better.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's evolution. Yeah, and so the voice of reason, right? The one that says do or don't. We don't have the ability to really access that until after 25. Now, that's not everybody, but for people that maybe didn't grow up with their dad around, and were presented with experiences that cause trauma, that does impact their ability to make decisions. And so when it's the frontal cortex, I guess, that fully develops after age 25, and you start to rationalize things a little bit more. And I think before that, you're a little irrational, easy to anger. Mm-hmm. And so I think, the beautiful thing about having purpose is it gives you a taste of what it's like to do something good, and to contribute. And that's what it gave me. It wasn't necessarily deliberate. It just was a divine accident. I became a trainer because I knew I'd be good at it. It was a nice change from sports. I quit sports in college. The gym was my new home, and it was where I found camaraderie, family, all of that. And so I became a trainer just because I thought it was a good idea, and where it took me was a different place. I became a trainer because I could impact another person's life.
Mm.
And that helped guide me through those times. It isn't to say that once I started specializing in supporting people that needed to lose a significant amount of weight, my problems went away. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that I had something, and it was something special.
Mm. Yeah, I guess it's something to some sort of gravity, I suppose, that you kind of pulls you back when life does sort of move you, I guess. You said earlier about weight loss being starting in the mind. Do you think that same principle applies to some of the work that you're doing on the corporate side as well? You've got your Pavelka wellness business, and I guess you work with a lot of sort of senior business people and the like. And do you think that how much of what you do is really sort of spending working with what goes on in between the ears, as opposed to getting to do squats and deadlifts and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all applies. I do think that for most of us, it starts from the mind. I mean, everything does technically start from the mind. When you look at beliefs and behaviors, it all kind of comes back to the mind. And that's kind of what CBT is based around, cognitive behavioral therapy. But I'm digressing a little bit here. I would say that for most people, getting a window into what's going on internally gives you a good idea of what they need to do externally. And so, yes, I like to ask questions, get to know the individual, what's going on in their environment, how do they feel about what's going on in their environment. I think feeling gets lost with a lot of us. We just kind of engage in actions, good or bad, because they give us something. They give us a sense of comfort. They give us a quick hit of something. But we pause to realize what's going on before that behavior. And I think just getting people to connect to feeling a bit more is a great exercise to start out with. It's like, how am I feeling today? Okay, great. I'm feeling good today. So what are the behaviors that will continue this feeling? Or, okay, I'm feeling stressed and overwhelmed. What do I do when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed? No matter if you're a person that has issues with food, we obviously know that food is going to be one of the things that you turn to. If you're someone that is a workaholic, then work is going to be something that you dive into to give you a sense of comfort. Now, it's not necessarily the best thing. It's familiar and you are used to it. So for me, what I like to do is let's disrupt the norm. Let's pause. Let's see what it looks like when we go from turning to the food to turning to a new habit, which could be going for a 5 to 10 minute walk. It could be getting pen and paper out and putting whatever is in your head onto paper. Instead of having an unhealthy meal, have a healthy meal, and just pay attention to how that feels. I think if we let feeling guide us, if we create awareness of how we're doing emotionally, how it feels, how that emotion feels, and then engaging in the behaviors that allow us to feel good, and like really good, not just in the moment good, but like overall good, then we've got it. I mean, that's really it. Know thyself, know what's going on with you internally so that you can identify the behaviors that will keep that feeling alive as much as you can. One other thing that I was going to say that ties into this is, for a lot of us, and this does tie into food and also in the corporate world, we want things to happen so fast. We are so quick to reward, right? Low risk, high reward. How fast can I get to the finish line? That mentality is making it really hard for us to identify the behaviors that are going to support us as human beings. It's one thing to get to the finish line fast. It's another thing to enjoy the experience once you cross the finish line, right? And I think that looking at the overall value of an experience requires staying power. That means you got to sit with it, right? You can't just plow on. You got to sit with it. And you have to look at like, okay, doing things differently might not be quick reward, might not be quick hit. It might be delayed, and I might have to be okay with that. So I think for a lot of people, again, whether you're struggling with food or you're senior level in an organization, struggling with burnout, slow down, look at the overall value of an experience, the overall value of a behavior. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that gets in people's way.
Why do you think why do you think so many people at the moment struggle with weight? You know, the yo-yo diets, and I did an interview just a couple of weeks ago, and I think they've said that obesity rates have tripled since the late 70s. So we seem to have more fitness trainers and more fitness clubs and more home workouts, and yet we're getting increasingly unhealthy. It doesn't seem as though it's because of a lack of knowledge and information, because certainly the research is pretty fantastic in terms of what people know, but it doesn't work. I suppose as someone that makes a living of helping people, why isn't it working?
I think that we are making it too complex. I think that we need to simplify. And this is going back to the gifts of COVID, like small, simple, these things are important. This idea that we have to have the next best app, or we have to, stay hip with whatever the new exercise trend is or the new diet, is the very reason that we're up and down, right? We're not meant to move from thing to thing to thing and it be completely different and just chase the excitement of it. We need to have a baseline. We have to have a standard of living that we show up to each and every day. Now, we can always go off and do the exciting new thing, but if we don't have our foundation in place, then things are going to fall apart. So I think a starting point for a lot of people is, what is your foundation? Like, what is it? What is your standard of living each and every day? The place you always come back to, no matter what. And that has to be built on very simple, sustainable behaviors. And then from there, you can go big. But I think we're seeing an increase in obesity. We're seeing an increase in stress levels and burnout because we're making things too complex. And really all we need to do is slow down, simplify, and define what our foundation is.
Do you think people know know a lot of this? Like, if you read the news, certainly, I guess you got to be careful of what you read about in the news nowadays. But there certainly seems to be a general feeling that if we talk about this COVID situation, that if you are overweight and particularly obese, you're seriously at risk for taking this, being a lot more sick than somebody who wasn't. Do you think people sort of realize that, whether it's COVID or anything else, that they are putting themselves into this position but they're just happy with it? Or do you think generally, people really need a lot of, sort of professional help to get them healthy again?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on who you're dealing with, but I think most people that are in, that are super morbidly obese, there's much more going on than just the physical. And it's really important that you do have additional support and resource to be able to understand that. I think we all need to kind of go on a journey of self-discovery, but I think people in that position really need it. Really need to understand who they are and why they do what they do in order to just make peace with it. A lot of people in that position, there's a past trauma, there's something that's gone on in the past that is consistently triggering a behavior, an emotion that triggers a behavior. And so it's just understanding that. And, this goes back to what I just mentioned. You've got these emotions, you've got these feelings, and getting in between the gap of emotion and feeling is where the magic happens. And I love what's happening in the world when you look at just health in general and even in the fitness industry. Mindfulness is becoming a part of even trainers' programs. They're building in these mindfulness spaces for mindfulness. And I think that mindfulness is a real gift. We're taking this very Eastern concept and we're making it palpable for us Westerners. And it's not something that you can only embrace if you're wearing white linens, right? It's like you can be an everyday person and pause and connect to your breath and get to know yourself and just get to know your thought life. And that's a real gift during this time, and a real gift for people who are struggling, because for me, that's where the real change happens. Paying attention to what's going on with you internally and just getting curious and then defining a new behavior for yourself is really where it all starts, and start small. But I think that's for me, that's the game changer. Slow down, get to know who you are, find your people, the resources that you need, the support that you need, and embrace this idea of mindfulness. Get to know yourself.
What are you seeing in the corporate world then, as it relates to health? Do you when you go into some of these companies, and without sort of talking about anything that's confidential, but in general, are you finding that there's a big link between the way and the behaviors people have in the world of business, and how that is affecting their life and health and even productivity? Do you see any patterns between all of that, and if so, what would you change?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the organization that you work for and which department within that organization you're a part of. There are a variety of organizations. You have some that are rational, and rational treats employee health as a tick box, right? It's part of the benefits package. They care about people, but they care about customers a bit more, and they expect the individual to take ownership. And I think that is important throughout. But in a rational organization, that's the approach. Then you have these more mature organizations, and you see it in the tech industry. And I mentioned before, we work with Cisco Systems. They're a very mature organization within their kind of HR department. They're very people focused, and it's not just a tick box. They have a variety of partners that they bring in. They treat it like an ecosystem of health and well-being, so everybody has something. They keep the conversation alive so people can communicate and share the various ways that they are staying healthy, staying fit throughout the year. And it happens from year to year. And so you have these two types that we'll hold in contrast. I think at the end of the day, we as individuals have to take ownership, and that's where things get lost. So it doesn't matter if you work for a rational organization or a mature organization. The one thing that both of those have in common is you can't expect the organization to wake you up in the morning and get you out the front door to go for a walk. We have to take ownership. And that's what I love about the work that we do. I talked about the 4 elements a while ago. None of those elements are prescriptive. It's about the individual taking ownership and defining how they eat, sweat, think, and connect. Everything is based on principles and standards. And usually we have the individual define what those principles and standards are so that they feel as though they're in the driver's seat. I think what this does is it shifts the mentality from a reactive mindset, like, okay, what do I need to do today? You tell me what I need to do, to a proactive mindset where people wake up and they take action because they feel as though they have permission, they have the freedom to do it, and it's okay. And that's the difference. So both can take ownership, but the individual that takes ownership in a rational organization does it in isolation, right? They won't share it and celebrate it as much as they would in the mature organization. The mature organization will say, we want to hear all about it. Show us what you're doing. Let's celebrate all of this great stuff that you're doing for yourself to stay healthy. The other thing I'll add to this is this. The old model is, how can an employee wellness initiative or program impact our bottom line, right? How is it going to reduce our sick days? We need to see these kind of KPIs. I think that's changing. I don't think we need to prove it anymore. I think that, look, if you don't make this a priority, your people are going to suffer. And the more we increase technology, the more we have to make sure that people are making their health and well-being a priority. And that's just kind of the landscape that we're presented with right now. But going back to the individual, it's really up to us to take ownership. And some people might say, my company doesn't take care of me. I need that in my life now. I might need to look elsewhere. And that's a great way to hold the organization accountable.
Do you see that sometimes when you're working with organizations that you can have this conflict between what the business thinks it needs. And I'm talking about, I suppose, in terms of productivity or effectiveness. But do you see sometimes that there's a values conflict between, these are some of the expectations in terms of, what we want you to do and when you want to do it and how long we want you to work, with the sort of health side? And do you think sometimes that they're a little bit off balance? People probably don't realize that with that, taking that step away and having more of that, that time to think that you're actually going to be more productive, or is that research not really been done much? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where the organization and the leaders within the organization are held accountable, right? If you can be time driven or outputs driven, and those are two very different things. Clocking in and clocking out, that model, again, that's an old model as well. And I think that outputs are really important. Now, I know that depends on what type of organization you are, but I think outputs give people freedom. They give people flexibility. And so I would say that if you are an organization that has the ability to shift from time in to outputs, then you're going to give your people a bit more flexibility, and they're going to be able to identify, throughout that 24-hour period, what they need to do to take care of themselves. It'll be a little more free form, and it doesn't have to be a big disruptor either. One of the big challenges that we have when talking to leaders is, how do I know my people are going to be working, especially during this time? Like, how do I know my people are going to be working? My answer is, how do you know they were working before? Right? How do you know you were getting much out of them before? My big thing is, this doesn't have to be a disruptor, right? Just because your team members making some time for themselves doesn't mean that they're not still delivering value. And so it's not a disruptor, it's a value add. Now, if you've got a person that's not, there's no output, then the proof's in the pudding, right? And there's a conversation to be had then. But if you're getting the outputs from them and they're able to take care of themselves, use them as a case study and show some of the great things they're doing for themselves. Let them be an ambassador within the team, or a pioneer of well-being in your team.
It's a really interesting one, and it's something that I think about a lot, because I suppose as running a business, we've got over 100 employees, but then working in the business at the same time, and I know you've got different roles. If you've got to get a certain amount of parcels out of the door in a certain time, it's slightly different. But in a lot of cases, I find that when I'm out of the office, when I'm running, and particularly recently, I'll get fresh air for an hour or two, and that's when I tend to have that time to kind of think about things, plan and balance ideas that I've been thinking through, and I'm almost like, well, am I working? Am I not working? Am I just in a good place so when I go back to work, I'm going to be better prepared? So it's a real interesting one, because I think, well, what would I rather the people that work for me do? Would I rather them have that 2 hours where, I don't know what they're doing, but they're sort of putting their mind in a very strong and healthy place, and their body? Or would I rather them be sitting at the desk sort of daydreaming about the weekend?
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point, which is opportunity for reflection. We build into our week, we encourage our team to get 3 hours of creative time being opportunity to reflect on what we've done and be able to contribute value. Like, what can we change? What can we do differently? And that can only be achieved through solitude. And solitude is something that's really been lost. There's some great work by Cal Newport, who has a book called Digital Minimalism. And he talks about solitude, and it's something that's been lost. In back-to-back meetings, we don't have time to really even think about the meeting that just happened and like what came out of it. And so then you're waiting until the very end of the day to reflect on all of this information that you've been trying to digest throughout the whole day. And so you don't have opportunities to have quality reflection and quality focus and quality creativity. And so breaking up the day and creating some space for solitude and reflection is only going to be a value add to you and to your team and to your organization. And I love that you're doing it already and having your teams do it. This is, here's the thing, when we look at health and wellness for an individual, it doesn't stop there, right? I think, and that's the issue for a lot of us is like, oh yeah, I do it for me. There's so much in sharing what you do with your teams. We do something, we share gratitudes at the start of our meetings. We try to set the tone for a healthy meeting by saying, you know what, I'm grateful for this today. And if it's a smaller meeting, we go around the virtual room and everybody just shares a gratitude. Now, that is such a small thing, but it gets the people that are a part of that team feeling as though they're important as human beings. And it's what it represents. And for some people, it's like, that's a little bit too, a little bit too cute and cuddly for me. But the science is there, right? Positive psychology is a real thing. And I think the more we do it, the more we believe in it because we experience the impact of it. So don't let what you're doing for yourself, don't do it in isolation. Don't succeed and strive in isolation. Share and show all the wonderful things you're doing for yourself with your team. Start the meeting with gratitude. Stop the meeting 10 minutes early for solitude. And all these little bitty tweaks are great enhancements to how you operate, how you become more efficient and productive. And they don't have to disrupt. They just add value.
And I think when you talk about the Zoom meetings, the Zoom marathon where you could have 6 or 7, and I suppose you get different meetings through the day, some that are fairly straightforward and easy, and some where you've really got to be on the game. And I guess if you have a few of those difficult meetings where and we all get them where they don't go particularly well, I suppose as you get to the end of the day, your emotional state is probably a bit battered. And I suppose it's at those times where you can maybe react in ways that you shouldn't, or say things that you shouldn't, or make decisions maybe that are just off the cuff without thinking about it. So I suppose when when I start thinking about this, it's like, wow, it can have a massive effect, particularly as you get towards the end of certain days, the stress of certain things, if you're a little bit under pressure and not had time to even process some of those things that have happened to you.
Yeah, I think avoiding how we feel is probably one of the worst things we can do for ourselves. And if we're constantly plugged in, we're not doing it intentionally, but we're not creating space to just become aware of how we feel. And so it's like avoiding your child, right? That's going to have a negative impact on that relationship, right? Your kid's going to be tugging at your t-shirt and you're going to be like, no, I don't have time for this. I've got this meeting. Imagine yourself, right? Like your true self doing the same thing. It wants your body, your mind, your heart, your soul. It needs attention. It needs room. It needs conversation. And if we don't make room for those things, then we suffer. And when an emotion is heightened, we don't have the resilience to deal with it. We don't have the bandwidth. And so we try to suppress the emotion. We do it with alcohol. We do it with food. We do it with other behaviors that we're not too proud of, and it just perpetuates. And so, talking about, what can we do today? I think you asked me a question about, people that are needing to lose a significant amount of weight and dealing with emotions and people in organizations. I think just listen to yourself. Like, what's going on with you? Give yourself a little bit of room for awareness and just check in with yourself. It's not a big thing. It doesn't take a lot of time. It just takes a moment.
What's your thoughts on what I'll call it a health and fitness or health and wellness space of the future will look like, whether that's within a corporate environment or a standalone? I know particularly at the moment that industry's going through a lot of pain, and I'm sure there's a lot of businesses that probably won't make it through, and I guess there'll be new things that come through. But based on your experience, what do you think it'll be a time for that model to evolve into something a little bit different based on some of the things we're talking about today, or what's your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've already kind of partially entered the gig economy. And when you look at within organizations, you see more dynamic teams, cross-functional, And so I think while that comes with challenges, I think familiarity is at stake, comfort is at stake to a certain extent, but then there's also this journey, right? It's like you're able to be a part of so much more along the way, rather than in the same team all the time doing the same things. And so I think that what you'll see is this ownership, giving the individuals the tools that they need in order to feel good. People will need to take more ownership of themselves than they probably did before. With that comes challenge. I think making sure those resources are there is key, but then also giving them the freedom to go out into these various teams, into these different projects, and share those things. I think that's really important. So if it's some very simple thing that you're doing for yourself that gives you peace of mind, that has you feeling good, that's great. You're doing it for you. You're now moving over to this team. We need you to share some of that with this team. Share some of that positive energy, some of that how-to with this team. So you'll have this opportunity to cross-pollinate. And I think off the back of this, you'll see the gig economy, this whole concept will be amplified. You'll see a lot of freelancers popping around different projects. And I think in that, it's not just about you showing up and doing the work. It's about the impact that you have on people. So what can you do for yourself that you can share and show with others? And I'm talking all about well-being, health and well-being here. What can you do that is going to have a positive impact on the people around you? And that's really up to you to define and to own. That's exciting, but that's also scary.
So what's your what is the sort of future looking for the Pavelka group of businesses then? Where are you going to be sort of focusing on, and any sort of changes that you've not been done yet, or that you're likely to embark on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm really enjoying the direction that we're going. I love working with people. That's never going to change. And I think it's how we do that and how we deliver that work that is constantly going through iterations. We've got technology that we use. We've got a community called the House, which is a way that we bring people together and we educate and remind. And then we've got challenge technology that's just a fun way to increase engagement, to spike engagement. And there's some other things we're working on as well that will, if all goes well, that will be just cues, little nudges to remind people to take care of themselves. And I think that, especially in the world of work, is what people need. They just need that nudge. And so when we look at the products, that's exciting. And I think when you look at career, I don't think it matters if you're working in organizations. For the work that I do, I've got two parts to me. I've got business owner, and then I've got, this sounds really weird me saying it, but figurehead, right? I've got my own personal brand. And I think there's a duty of care to rise out of the business and say, this is what people need. And I think I want to continue to do that. I want to continue to grow and advance my understanding of what it means to be healthy. I know I was talking about going back to the basics and keeping it simple. Yes, I think that will always be how I believe to achieve health and well-being. However, the messaging has to change. You have to understand what really speaks to people. And I think just getting close to that as much as I can, as we continue to evolve and grow, is going to be important. All of that to say, I love what I'm doing right now, and I just want to keep doing it.
And do you think that the fact that you probably can't interact with people in the same, or maybe we won't be able to do that. Do you think that has a positive or negative shift on, particularly in the health and wellness space, where it is very much, there is a lot of interaction and there's communities that you create. And I suppose having to do that, even this interview here, there's a little bit lost in translation when you're not sort of there with the person. What are your thoughts on that? Or do you just think, look, that's inevitable. It's a better way to go. It's more efficient. And, we just got to embrace it.
I think it's inevitable. We've got to embrace the virtual world. Now, that doesn't mean that we say goodbye to human connection. I just think that we just have to become more familiar with it and what it means to us. Because I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, what does this mean? Like, can I trust this? Can I trust that there's this person on this screen telling me how to live my life? Is it right? Right? It's very different than when you're in the room and you can shake hands and you can hug. There's a little more trust that can be built, and I think that the meaning is really important, and just being able to embrace it and trust it. This medium is really one of the biggest hurdles people have to get over as we transition to this more virtual world that we're going to be living in. I don't think our lives are going to look the way that they do or they have looked over the last couple of months, but I do think that no doubt companies will be shifting to a more virtual experience. I mean, in APJC where we work, over 70% of the individuals that were working in organizations, and at APJC, it's a very in-office culture in most of the countries. Already 70% are saying they would like to work from home more and have virtual meetings. And so that, coupled up with the same stats here in the US, just say that it's inevitable. So we just have to embrace it. And it's not wrong, it's just different. That's the big thing to remember. It's different, and it's going to require us building a new set of beliefs and behaviors for ourselves, for our families, for our teams.
And you mentioned about your personal brand, and I think you used the word trust there. Do you think that's really where, if you are sort of a trainer or you have a business, that it's that the time building the personal brand and being able to communicate that trust so people are more comfortable in dealing with you as opposed to another one is more important now than probably what it was before then?
Yeah, I mean, man, we scratched the surface of, this kind of the influencer era. And, I hope that we get past that soon. It's funny because you've got, this movement of influencers, but you've also got these academics who are really stepping up. And they have more of a voice now than they did before, and they're starting to understand and share on these different mediums, podcasts, just like this. There's just more resource. There's more of everything out there, and I think that what's great is you've got what's nice to see, and then you've got what's right, and I think that people will eventually land on what's right if they're awake. And so I try to, and I think for anybody that's got a brand, if you do what's right, then you can feel good about that, and people will trust that. If you do what looks good, then you will find your career is short-lived. And so do what's right, make it about people. Like I said at the start of this, make it about people, and the trust will naturally be built. Create a really cool, safe environment for people. Be real yourself. I think right now, if you're a leader in an organization, if you're a leader of a family, if you're a human being on planet Earth, authenticity, vulnerability are a superpower. Be authentic, be real, express vulnerabilities, and do it from a grounded state. You don't have to fall apart and cry. You just need to say, I'm having a tough time. This isn't easy. What are you doing? How can you help me? Now, how can I help you? Like, that's it. Just be real. Be as real as you can.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It certainly seems to be that big shift where people, they're looking for that transparency. And I guess with this, certainly on the social media side and the influencer part, it is now it's difficult to do a lot of that. The nice holiday and the nice body, and people are not been in the gym and the diets are gone and they're not traveling. It's like, well, okay, what are we going to, how are we going to now connect with people in a real way? And I suppose it, as you say, it magnifies a lot of that stuff a lot more, doesn't it now? And people want a bit of, it's like, well, okay, what, who am I investing in or supporting? And it's sort of, I think it's exposed that really.
Yeah, I think these times have been, I don't know about you, but I've got nice things, but they don't mean anything, especially right now. Like, you can have a Rolex, but no one's going to see you wearing it right now. It's like, I think I think these times are really accelerating anything that was already happening for us. And I think that, as you said, transparency, is really important. I think that, in the world of fitness, I've noticed that people are adding a new layer to their brand, and it is becoming a little more human. And I think that's great, right? It's let's see who you are as a human being, not just what how much you can lift and what you look like. Let's get a taste of who you are, and I think that's a beautiful thing, right? And I mean, this has gone on for a while. I don't know why I'm saying it's happening now, but I think people want to see the human side.
Yeah, definitely. So before we sort of wrap up, a couple more questions for you. If there's anyone interested in finding out some more information about you, what you've got going on the business side, or your books and that, what have you got going on? Where can people find a little bit more information about you, Jessie?
Yeah, so right now I've got an app that launched not that long ago. It's called JP4. It is an opportunity for you to start looking at your health in a different way. It's all based around the 4 elements: eat, sweat, think, and connect. It's got your exercise program. It's got a meal plan. It's very extensive. It does require work and effort. I call it the thinking person's program. The game changer is it's got an inward journey as well. So you've got your nutrition, you've got your exercise, eat and sweat, but then you've got this inward journey, and it's a series of podcasts that take you from creating a foundation for yourself, understanding your why are you showing up, why are you embarking on this journey, all the way to you helping another individual because you have had a transformation of your own, sharing your story and being able to impact another human being's life. And so that's been launched. That's accessible in the app, the Apple Store, and on Android as well. I've got a book called The Program that's been out for a while. You can check it out if you want. And then other than that, I mean, you can go to pavelka.co.uk. That's our website, or jessiepavelka.com, and see some of the things that we have going on and get to know me and my work a little bit more. And I think that's it, Matthew.
Yeah. And you mentioned on the corporate fitness side and on that as well then. So what is that something that you're offering, or is it just like specific customers, people you're working with, or are you offering it to other companies as well?
Yeah, so we do offer it to other companies. If you go to pavelkawellness.com, that was one that I didn't mention, which is our corporate page. You can, if you are interested, if you're a leader of an organization and for your team, you want to bring something different in, we come in and we deliver sessions. There's a variety of resources that we have, and it's a great opportunity for an organization, a leader, and their team to start doing things differently and start making well-being a part of the culture. And so, yeah, if there is anybody listening to this that would be interested in that, they go to pavelkawellness.com.
And just, I was going to ask you about the app, because a lot of people I'm talking to at the moment have gone from a traditional bricks and mortar business and now, I guess, scrambling to try and find some sort of app or online presence and thinking about how much money to chuck into it. You've been at this for a while. What's your experience about apps? Are they all they're made out to be, or is it a tough long road to to make money from them?
I mean, I think it's like anything else. If you're willing to put in the work to innovate, to and again, like, this goes back to putting people first. If you're thinking of the end user and innovating and putting in the hours, then it can be fruitful. I think if you aren't willing to play the long game, then don't show up to the starting line. I think the long game is got to be honored in throughout all of this, really. One of the things we didn't bring up is the gym in Los Angeles retrofit, which we can talk about offline, but we do have a gym in Los Angeles called Retrofit WeHo, which is it's a studio, private training studio, along with we've got a cafe and another studio for classes as well. And that's been, obviously during these times things have slowed down, but it is something that we really are proud of here in Los Angeles to be able to provide to the public.
Fantastic. So, well, look, final question, Jessie. Escape Your Limits is about escaping what you've believed is impossible and gone on to make it possible. What would be an example of where you've escaped your own personal limits? And not when you was younger and you sort of did 20 shots.
We'll stay away from that.
We'll stay away from that conversation. Yeah,
we'll stay away from that. I think, okay, let me think about this. So what is it? What is a moment that I did something I didn't think I could do, essentially?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, this is going to be kind of, it's not cheesy. It is a little soft and cuddly. Becoming a dad. I was really overwhelmed by it at the start. I love the idea of it, but there was a moment when I was really overwhelmed by it, and it is my favorite job. It is at times the hardest job, and not hard because of my child, probably hard because of me. I would say that's it. Now I will shift to career. I would say that believing in what I do and what we do, and being willing to share it with more and more people was an evolution for me. I think, in the creative process, you create something and you think, yeah, I like it. Whether it's a song or painting or a business plan, and you like it, and you've got a handful of people that like it, but then there's this point in the journey where all of a sudden you set it free and you start to share it with other people. And that's a very vulnerable and revealing experience. And so I would say, taking a concept, a business idea, which was Pavelka initially, to an idea, to implementation, to then sharing it with loads of people, with one to many, in large groups and organizations. I think along that journey, I just woke up, looked up, and said, "Wow, this was not something that I expected." And so I think that for me was, and I can't pinpoint a certain day or time, but that for me was a very revealing and powerful experience to look up one day and say, "Oh, we've really done something here. This is special."
And would you say that's being, I suppose, in touch with, when you said about creating this idea, would you say that's being in touch and just really believing that you're doing things for the right reason? Because I suppose if you're creative, you can have a lot of ideas, and I suppose it's like you say, when you show it to the world, that's really the test of, is it a good idea or not? So I suppose, do you think part of that success was just really, being in touch with yourself, and also being in touch with the idea that is going to make a difference, and that you was going to do whatever it took to let people know about it?
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think that is kind of it. I think it's, if you're doing something that's right and for people, you can't go wrong, right? You can't, you don't have to feel bad about that. I think when you start developing products, all of a sudden it's like, this is a little bit different, right? It's like, okay, it's still about people, but they better like this damn product. Those people better like this, right? It's like, it just starts to get bigger. It starts to get bigger, and it starts to have more meaning, and you start to attach a bigger story to it. Like, what happens if this doesn't work out? And, you start to, the imposter syndrome starts to get bigger as well. And, that's been my experience. I've got a good coach, and I've got an inner critic, and along the creative process, from idea to implementation, both of those guys show up, and I've just got to remember, we're doing this for a certain reason. It comes from a good place, and I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah. But like you say, it's a long, that way of doing it, like exercise, I guess you said, everybody wants something quick and short, but I suppose it is a long game. And I guess whether you're trying to keep yourself healthy or build a great business, there's no get rich, get fit quick scheme on the market really that works, is there? No.
And if there was, I don't know that you would enjoy it. Right? It's like there's just pain and suffering that comes along with this, right? And if if it happened quick, I'm not sure you would look back and say, wow, and this goes back to overall value of an experience. It takes some pain and struggle to really appreciate. Something to think about for those struggling out there.
Yeah, that's part of the fun, I guess. And I suppose now, being in a time like this, you really appreciate that as well, because you've got to look at it from that perspective. Otherwise, you go a bit crazy, I think. So, Jessie, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing your ideas. Plenty of food for thought there, certainly. And I wish you all the success and getting your business back online again after this is all over.
Thank you, Matthew. I appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to connect, and I really enjoyed the interview. So hopefully others do as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, then please go over to iTunes and subscribe to the Escape Your Limits podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. It really would help us a lot to continue to keep these going.